Good morning, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us here on this Thursday. We're still tracking the snow here for today and giving you a very similar update here for what we had yesterday as well. This will be about a 10-minute discussion here. We'll hopefully get your answers to your questions and we'll get things moving on. And then after that, just pretty much let it snow. That's where we're at here. Here's satellite and radar from across our state, and we've got some snow now out in central sections of Iowa. It is moving northeast, generally towards eastern Iowa. Cedar Rapids, Iowa City, not seeing anything quite yet, but we will probably by about 9 a.m. or so, the way things are tracking. And this will continue to work its way up towards the northeast and generally towards us. There is also some more moisture back down towards the south and west here this morning as well. Still down by Omaha and Shenandoah yet. So this first area pushes through, and then the actual low pressure system itself is actually back down towards our south. And what will actually wind up happening, which is kind of a unique setup, but it is pretty typical though of what you'll see in March. The low pressure system is located down towards the south in Missouri, and then eventually what we're going to wind up seeing here is this whole area starts to fill in with some more snow out here, and it just kind of pivots right over our area here during the evening and overnight. You'll see that visual on Pinpoint Futurecast as well. Here are the winter weather alerts. Yesterday it was a winter storm watch that was from generally Cedar Rapids and points north. Today it's a winter storm warning from Cedar Rapids and points north. The winter weather advisory buffers that down towards the south, and the general theme here is about 3 to 7 inches of really slushy snow is expected. Here's Pinpoint Futurecast as we roll things forward here for you this morning. Again, it starts to overspread the region. Dubuque, I would think that you're still several hours out yet, probably closer to maybe 11 o'clock, 12 here today for Dubuque to get your snow to begin in the area. And then you'll notice how it keeps coming. And then remember what I just showed you on satellite and radar. This action back in here will be very persistent, and this will probably be pivoting over the area here generally during the evening and overnight hours. And as a result, it'll still snow for several more hours yet, even deeply into the evening hours before things finally start to pull away going into the early part of tomorrow morning. So the snowfall forecast, we're going to see some varying totals in the area. I'll explain the science here behind that, and then I'm also going to dive into where we got some of these numbers and how it really works this time of year when we have to talk about compaction and really wet slushy snow versus really powdery snow. So we're expecting anywhere from 3 to 7 Interstate 80 and north, 1 to 3 farther down to the south. The thing is this is one of those events where it's not necessarily clean cut. If you look at the contouring right now, you'd think, all right, well, the low end of the 3 has to be happening right about by the Iowa City area, and then the high end of the 3 inches happens right in here. That's not necessarily the case in March. You could have a bullseye right here. You could have a bullseye right there. You could have another one over here. It just depends on how these bands exactly cycle over each other. So that's why the ranges are pretty large in this particular case. Also, snow and ice accumulation works differently this time of year on grass versus pavement. It's not like it's been a deeply Arctic air mass that we have had where the pavement is super duper cold. It's actually been a really nice start to the month of March so far. I've had a lot of warm days. So on grassy surfaces and rooftops, anything that's elevated, it's more exposed to cold air. It has much less of an impact on the actual surface temperature of the ground. However, on the pavement, it's within direct contact with the ground, and so as a result, we'll probably see less accumulation on pavement versus the grassy areas. So for example, you may measure 4.5 inches on the grass, but you may only measure 2.5 on your driveway. That could be one of those cases that we deal with here in eastern Iowa. This is also going to be more than likely a snowman or snowball kind of snow here because of temperatures that are generally into the 30s. And so that is something we'll want to be aware of going forward, that it's a heavy, wet, slushy consistency here of the snow. Here's one thing I do want to show you. I'm going to push up a different video source. I showed this yesterday. If you weren't able to be with us, I'm going to show it to you again today. This is the actual raw model data that we look at. And I'll explain what we're looking at right here and how we can kind of regenerate things. And so you can see my mouse here on the screen. This is our storm system for today. And you'll notice that all these different lines are various models that are being output. You can actually see all the numbers changing live up here at the top of the screen. But I'm just going to kind of push you towards 3, 4, and 5. That's generally where things are at. And what this is showing us is not just the average snowfall ratio, but it's also showing us the effects of compaction. Meaning as we keep adding weight to that first layer of snow, obviously it's going to compact and compact and compact. But watch what happens if we check compaction off and we regenerate it. If we were to do this again without any sort of compaction, it all clusters up around 6. That's not going to be the case for everybody. We're probably going to see a lot of 3s and 4s and 5s because things are being compacted like that. And so I at least want to show you what's going on. By the way, we haven't even talked about this other guy here. That's Saturday night into Sunday. That's a totally different setup. We'll have to deal with that at another time. But for right now, I at least wanted to show you kind of where those numbers come from and why we forecast what we do. There's always those times when things could still get a little hairy and we wind up getting, some of those bullseyes of 6s and 7s to come out somewhere, but it seems like we're going to be in a spot here for today that really kind of puts us into that 3, 4, and 5-inch range. Here's what we have. I'm going to get us back to satellite and radar and punch this up for you right now. Down to our south and west, we've got these snow showers that are starting to overspread the region. Temperatures are really borderline, by the way. I can pull those up. Here they are. Let me load those into the rundown right here. And you can see where we're at in terms of temperatures. We're in the 30s right now. And so it is cold enough to generate some snow, but that is another thing about this weather event is that we've got so many areas that are at or above freezing here. So as the snowfall comes down, and it needs to come down at a pretty heavy clip if it's going to start to accumulate. Now there's still pretty good presentation there on radar, obviously. There's some darker blues in there. So watch when the snowfall comes through here. And we would expect temperatures to drop a bit with this system rolling through as the accumulation kind of takes over. But those are all the different factors we're going into. This is not necessarily the simplest, most clean-cut system for us here because of all those factors, being the warm ground, the time of year, the fact that it has been so mild lately, and the fact that we really kind of need those heavier snowfall rates to overwhelm that warm ground to really get some accumulation to happen. Regardless, the winter storm warning has been issued here by the National Weather Service. We have about 4 minutes left of this discussion. We're going to go through some of these basics again here for you. And generally, Cedar Rapids on up towards the north with the winter storm warning, and then farther down to the south, it's a winter weather advisory. The timing is coming up pretty close now to Cedar Rapids and Iowa City to start to see some snow. Pinpoint Futurecast has actually had a really good handle on that leading edge here the last couple of days, really. And it looks like about 9 o'clock is a very reasonable start time for Cedar Rapids, Iowa City. Waterloo probably starting slightly sooner than that. Same towards Independence. Dubuque, you're going to wait for a little bit. You've probably got till the lunch hour, I would think, before you really start to see much as we kind of push it forward there. It doesn't really fill in on you till about noon. So really wouldn't expect a whole lot in that particular setup here towards Dubuque, at least not this morning. This afternoon, you'll get your fair share of some snow moving in. We'll have east winds at about 10 to 20. Blowing and drifting will be actually fairly minor in this case because of the heavyweight nature of the snow. And then this stuff continues. You'll see there's this back edge on radar out in here, and I'll draw it in for you so you can see the comparison between when we are seeing the snow at 6 and then watch what happens as I go forward another few hours. That back edge is kind of slow to move. It only moves east by about a tier or two of counties right there, so it is going to linger. This thing will linger here this evening, and so that's what's probably also going to contribute to additional snow. I would say if for whatever reason you see a lull in the snow at 2:30 in your individual area, it's probably going to fill right back in again. So I would actually think that forecasting snow for pretty much the entire evening is still a pretty good approach, and then after midnight we'll start to get things out of here at that point. Final check of that snowfall forecast here for you today. Temperatures are near freezing throughout this event and even a little bit above, so varying totals are going to be likely. Again, it will depend on whether you're measuring on a grassy surface, an elevated surface, or your own driveway. If nothing else, what really helps when you've got a snowfall setup such as this one is the fact that you actually probably wind up shoveling a little less because you're not going to have to shovel your yard. I guess I do shovel a path for the dog, but aside from that, there's really not a whole lot of shoveling you got to do on grassy areas. So if nothing else, it kind of helps to have it on sidewalks and driveways a little bit less. Of course, what also happens is I did notice that the city laid down some pre-treatment here this morning too. So that obviously allows for a little melting on contact on some of the road surfaces. So that could also keep accumulations down on paved areas, but watch those grassy surfaces today. 3 to 7 inches north, 1 to 3 farther down towards the south, and this system will come and go. And then after that, we're going to be dealing overall with kind of a messy weekend system here Saturday night into Sunday. If you're curious about the Sapodopso parade downtown, looks just cold and dry at this point for parade time, but it does look like we'll be back at it again with a chance for some scattered snow Saturday night into Sunday. So in closing, the snow is on the way. Pretty much once it starts, you just let it snow. We're not expecting necessarily a ton of wind behind it. The wind chills won't be too bad as a result. We expect temperatures in the 30s throughout. It'll be a good packing snow for snowmen and snowballs. And again, several inches are expected here with this particular storm system. As we look ahead, we'll continue to provide updates as the system goes by. Meteorologist Jan Reichert is in for midday today, which starts at 11 o'clock. And then 4, 5, 6, and 10, meteorologist Joe Winters and meteorologist Corey Thompson will have you covered at that point, and then early tomorrow morning, we'll just find out what we get across eastern Iowa, and it'll be probably several inches for the vast majority of us. Thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate you being here. Let us know if you have any additional questions, but that pretty much lays out everything.